All right, we're on. Neil, how you doing, my friend?
Antoine, I'm really good and good to see you again. And thank you for inviting me on.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining me today. It's really a pleasure. I was real excited and looking forward to finally having this chat with you. Obviously, you and I know each other personally. We met about 8 years ago, I think it's
Yeah.
been. We worked together at the same company, and for a couple of years, and then you went your way, I went my way, and we've kept in touch over the years, which is really nice. I've enjoyed, seeing sort of how your career has progressed and the trajectory that you've been on.
Thank you.
So let me just give a little bit more background about you, and then I'll give you an opportunity to maybe just fill in the blanks.
Yeah, go for it.
Everyone. So Neil's a really unique person in that I think you have a really warm and sort of appealing sort of demeanor and personality that people want to be around you, and I think that's not, that's either you have it or you don't have it, and I think you've got it. I think that was one of the things that I noticed about you when we first met right away. It was just you're a really warm and friendly guy. And I think obviously it helps when it comes to your personal and your professional life. I know that you're in London, you're a family man, you have a son, as do I, and you're passionate about SDR work and SDR business. And so you were in an SDR type role when we met at the company we were working at, and you've kind of grown since then. So I know that's kind of a really brief summary and very general, but do you want to just give your own personal sort of introduction as far as like, who you are and, why you get out of bed in the morning?
Happy to. Well, first and foremost, thank you so much. I find it really hard to take compliments, but being told that I'm a warm and approachable person makes me happy. So thank you for that. And it's been actually great, to learn from you the last few years and being connected online and having catch-ups with you. And I've always picked your brain as I've gone through different positions. So again, thank you to yourself, Antoine. But as you mentioned, so Neil Bhuiyan, based in the UK. In a nutshell, I'm an SDR trainer / coach. Been working in SaaS software for about the last 11 years, and sales is something I am passionate about. But predominantly what I'm passionate about is young people coming into the profession of sales and giving that helping hand, to be successful, enjoy the art of selling, the art of prospecting. And my why behind that is when I started in corporate sales many years ago, I went through the sales training experience. Let's just say it scarred me a little bit because it was quite hard. And I remember my sales trainer on the day that I had my first ever sales training. I remember in the session, Antoine, I asked him, like, why do we do these type of questions and why can't we do it like that way? Yeah. And this guy's response to me was, because I'm paid to teach and you're paid to listen. That's why. And I sat there just thinking, like, who the hell is this guy?
Right.
And that has always stayed with me through the different positions and roles that I've gone through. And, when I've hired teams, I don't want to be that guy. And I want people to feel comfortable when they start out a new job or, they're learning something for the first time. So, yeah, I wanted to make a difference.
That's really interesting. And I'm sorry you had to suffer through that type of experience with that individual. I know personally I've gone through that myself. But the good news is it sounds like what we have in common is we took what was a bad experience, but we turned it into a learning opportunity, which is always what you hope for, I guess, right?
Indeed.
So one of the things that I'm always curious about is, what is it about, the SDR work in particular that sort of fulfills you, and finding the alignment between, just who you are as a person. Because, I'm sure you heard the expression, do what you love and you'll never work another day in your life. And I can honestly say I'm doing what I love. So it's not laborious. I enjoy it. It's not easy, but I enjoy it. But I know that there's some people that aren't quite there. They're doing a job maybe just for the paycheck, but they're really passionate about something else. So kind of take me back further, to sort of your upbringing, your childhood, your early years in England. what sort of experiences do you think sort of helped shape you or build the foundation that you're now sort of fulfilling? You know what I mean? There should
Yeah,
be a connection there, right?
definitely. So where do we start? So upbringing came from a good family, a musical family. My father was an accountant. My mother was a singer. My sister was somebody that was studying and went off to university. So I had a lot of people to ask advice from. And we had quite a good, diverse community around us from people from different backgrounds. And in South London, um, I had a lot of different influences, which touched me in different ways and helped me with my learning and understanding of, there is much more in life than just, going to do a job. There are careers, there's aspirations. There's a lot of people that I used to look up to.
Yeah.
Um, but in my younger years, my problem was authority. I really had a problem with authority in the sense of I'm always happy to work with people, but if I feel that I'm being pushed to do something or I'm told to do something without being given the opportunity to ask, why are we doing this? I'd really find it hard to follow teachers, etc. And that got me into a lot of trouble when I was younger, admittedly. And I remember in my early years of high school, I was that tearaway guy that was sitting in the back of the class with the bad guys and not really paying attention to what the teachers were saying. And I was in like a lot of bottom sets of classes. But something happened to me when I was younger where, admittedly, I was involved in sort of like gang culture within South London, and it was mixed with music and friends and all this sort of stuff. But something happened to me where I got in trouble with the law. And at that point, I realized my friends weren't my friends and they weren't supporting me. They weren't around. They just completely ran off. And that kind of was a defining point just before I went into my last year of high school, where I was just thinking, okay, damn, these guys are not my family, or, they're not going to help me progress into things that I want to do later in life.
Yeah.
So I didn't disown my friends, but I kind of made a conscious effort to think, do you know what? I need to do me. And I need to put a little bit more attention into what I'm going to, because I'm about to go to college. That within, 2 or 3 weeks of starting a new year, I moved up to all these top sets within science, maths, and English. And I was like, okay, this guy has a brain. But funny enough, my teachers I wouldn't say they didn't like me, but they were very dubious about me because of my character and my background.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time I would have troubles in classes where they were thinking, Neil, why are you coming into this class? Like, you shouldn't be here. Not in the sense of you're a person, you shouldn't be here, but they thought that I hadn't actually upgraded into these classes. And I remember I had an instance with my maths teacher where I turned up to his class and I walked in and I sat down and he said, Mr. Bhuiyan, they called us by our last names back then, I'd like you to get out. And I was like, this is my class and I'm here. And he was like, okay, if you're not going to listen to me, we're going to go straight to the head teacher. So he frog marched me down 8 flights of stairs to the office, to the head teacher, brought me into the room and they said, Mr. Bhuiyan is disrupting our lesson. And he's just turned up and he shouldn't be here. And my head teacher turned around to me and said, he should, I've moved him into your class. And he was like, and I didn't smirk. I didn't do anything. I was just like, well, I told you. But anyway, towards that, I was making conscious effort, but unfortunately, I didn't get the results that I wanted to get in order to further my studies within college. So my family weren't very happy with this because they paid for private tuition. They put a lot of effort into their kid and he didn't get the results. And I was always fearful of, not getting or pleasing my parents.
Sure.
And as I've grown up, I've kind of realized it's not about making them happier, but as long as I'm happy, my parents should be happy. And we've had those discussions. But back then, quite young, I was trying to like do things. And then my father just said to me, he's like, look, you either get a job or you go study something that you think you're going to be good at. And what do you like most? And I was like, I love computers. I love IT. I love hardware, because that's where I see the future going. And I was always a geek. My father used to have like an IBM 486 machine, like from his office. And I used to sit there playing in DOS at age 13, just like coding and just trying stuff out and messing. I wasn't interested in games. I was just intrigued as to how computers worked and software worked. So I went into study IT, passed that. That was all great. But then some issues in my family life happened and I had to drop out of college. Simply put, I didn't like my parents' authority. So I left home at 18. And I had to, go to college, get a job, pay for rent, and it became very difficult. So I had to give up one, and unfortunately, I had to give up college again in order to have a job and, to pay rent.
Right.
And at the time, my sister was going for her degree, And I used to sit down with my sister Tasha, and I said, Tash, like, I'm fearful that, you know, I've dropped out of college twice. I know that I need some sort of education to get a good job in the future. I have no idea where the hell I'm going. And my sister gave me one of the best bits of advice. I remember I was staying with her. She was at Greenwich University, and I like took a week out to go like stay with her. And she said to me, "It's like, Neil, look, with the university degree, it's something I'm doing and I'm enjoying it, but people do degrees for different reasons. So for herself, she wanted to get a degree within business and, you know, perhaps go work somewhere and use that degree in future life. She said some people just come to university because they want to live that university life and they get a degree out of it. You know, it's a life experience. But she says equally, I have friends that I've worked with that haven't gone to university and they're on, you know, higher pay scales than me, or they're in higher positions. So it's really a case of what you want to get out for it. And I said to her, I said, okay, that's really cool. So thank you for that. But I'm scared about what mum and dad are going to say. And she was like, I get it, but it's about you. It's not mum and dad that are going to do it. Dad's made me do a degree that I freaking hate. So that's why I changed my degree and I'm now doing business because he wanted her to become an accountant. So a couple of years went by and I went into different jobs, and then I came to the realization that I want to get into sales. And this was because I used to work for local authority. And when the first iPhone ever first came out, I geeked out on it. And I was like one of the youngest guys in my department with 350 employees. And when the iPhone came out, I just couldn't stop talking about it. And I convinced like 15 to 30 people to buy the new iPhone because I just kept going on about it. And one day a colleague walks past my desk and he said, Neil, you know, I bought the iPhone. He says, do you work for Apple? Because you're a salesman for them. And I was just like, no, I'm not a salesman. But that's when it tweaked in my head. And I was like, if I can convince people to get something that they think they don't need, but, you know, they can't live without, maybe this is something I want to pursue.
Right.
But unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but in my own mindset, because I didn't have the degree, I didn't have work experience, etc., I didn't know how I was going to get into it. So I started speaking to a lot of different friends that did sales role. They were either doing telesales or real estate sales and stuff like that. And I thought, okay, real estate is something I could potentially get into and, you know, learn the way a salesperson works. And Antoine, I went for 11 different job interviews and I failed miserably in all of them. But I kept learning something from each interview, you know, like if it was a lack of knowledge of, you know, products or services that these type of people provide, I was asking those questions. And it got to the last ever interview. And I remember speaking to a guy in London in Long Acre Lane, opposite the Freemasons Hall. And that's something we can talk about a bit later on. And I said to him, what is it that I could change? And he said, dude, you've got great charisma. You've got that spirit. And it's just this experience piece that I just, you know, that's why I can't give you this job. And he said, my advice to you is maybe go find a job where you maybe do admin. So you get to learn the ins and outs of what people do. And then if you find a position, go for it then. And I was like, okay, cool. I was a bit disheartened and I was young and I was just thinking, okay, maybe forget this. But then an opportunity came around where I found an admin job working within a B2B business. And I was literally sales support. So every time sales closed something, I would do all the admin, the paperwork for the subscriptions. I'd be doing the renewals. I'd be talking to customers on the phone. And I did it because I wanted to sit next to a bank of salespeople, hearing how they closed or, you know, how they all got happy before the day started and how they all celebrate successes and looking at their numbers and spreadsheets because I had to give them updates on it as well. And that really started exciting the hell out of me. And I remember I had a manager, a guy called Toby Phelps, and he sat right opposite me. And he was a really good leader because he was, you know, warm, empathetic, but he was also firm and he got stuff done. And I always used to say, Toby, like, how do I progress and how do I get into this sales role? He said, Neil, you know, you just got to sit here for a bit and figure out if this is something really for you. And I was always somebody very impatient at that age, just wanted to get stuff. And if anybody told me no, I wanted to know why. And then how do I overcome that? And that job came to an end and they moved me into the headquarters of a company, a B2B company in the UK. And I was doing this admin role again for a while. And I was working in a bank of like 20 ladies doing admin, subscriptions and finance. And one of the ladies made the comment and she said, Neil, like you look after these customers and these sales guys are just throwing deals over the fence and you're just having to fix it and advise them what the hell they've actually bought and, you know, helping them log into the platform. I was like an agony uncle for our customers. And the lady said to me, "Is like, Neil, you're a better salesperson than the people that we have today." And I was like, "Okay, thanks." You know, a bit of an ego boost. And they said, why don't you do sales? And I said to them, that's exactly why I'm here, because I'm trying to learn about the products before I approach, going for the sales job. And then one day I bumped into our sales director, a guy called Jonathan Heyman. I said, Jonathan, hey, have no experience, but I know the product. I know the ins and outs of it. I just really want a chance and I want to break into sales. What are your thoughts? And he just said to me, I don't know, because you don't have that experience. And I don't know if you've got that sales hunter mentality, Neil, but you're a nice guy and everybody likes you. So I'm happy to give you a shot, and I'll give you 4 weeks. And if it doesn't work out, then you go back to finance and we don't have this conversation again. And I was like, dude, well, I didn't say dude, but I was like, yeah, you got a deal. Let's do this. Yeah. And I was basically doing a BDR job of cold calling, trying to book appointments and handing them over to the account execs. And I was quite successful. And I really loved the art of cold calling. And what happened naturally was every time they hired a new BDR, they would sit them next to me and I'd show them how to use our CRM, how to pick out lists, how to do cold calling, how to speak to C-level people and HR personas and connect with them on LinkedIn straight after. And the ramp up time for these new hires were much quicker than it was historically. And then came about the whole, okay, we're now going to give you formal sales training, and it's about spin selling. So situation, pain, impact, and need, created by Neil Rackham. And we've got this great trainer that's going to do a 2-day boot camp with you. And I was freaking stoked. I was just like, okay, I don't have the degree, but I'm getting my sales qualification. I'm going to learn something. And I went along to this training. It was in a local Holiday Inn, and we had all the team, and we're all bright, young 20-somethings. And I'm super excited. And I think I geeked out. I think everybody attended like, oh, another sales training. Do we have to do this? And I was just like, hey, we're doing sales training. This is really fun. Yeah. And people looked at me quite weirdly, rightly so. But we went through the course and we learned about like situation, pain, implication, need, questioning, question-based selling, and all this sort of stuff. And some things didn't sit right with me in terms of the way this person was teaching us, to lead the conversation. And, you may get these objections, but we're trying to do a close. And he was more quite of an aggressive salesperson, and that isn't my style. So I challenged him. I realized I kind of challenged him and asked these questions. And that's when he kind of came back to me with look, and I think I was that difficult student, but he was just like, this is what I'm being paid to teach you, and you guys are paid here to listen, and this is how it runs, and this is how we do sales training. And I just thought, that's BS. But I thought, okay, do you know what? Take the best of what I've learned from it and then apply it to my job. And again, I was quite successful in that. But again, my thing is I always want more, and I'm always impatient, because as a BDR, I just wanted to go into a closing role. So I approached the sales directors again and I said, okay, what is it going to take for me to become an account executive, to be actually traveling, meeting people, doing demonstrations, closing business, earning commission? This was like my dream. And my sales director said, Neil, you've only been here about 8 or 9 months, but give it 3 to 5 years and I definitely see you becoming a successful salesperson. And in my head, I was like, hell no, that's way too long for me, dude. I can't wait that long. And luck have it, I bumped into a recruiter a few weeks later who told me that she worked for a US startup. And she actually said to me, oh, you've probably never heard of us. And she said, oh, I work for a San Francisco company called Zuora.
I'm sure.
And I paused and I looked her in the face and I was like, is that something to do with subscription billing that plugs in with Salesforce? And she was like, she almost dropped her wine. She was like, how the hell do you know? Like, nobody knows that, not even my friends and family. Oh. And I was like, because I've been using it when I used to work in finance before taking on this BDR role. Mm-hmm. And she turned around to me and Gabriella said, Neil, do you want to be rich? And I was like, I didn't know how to take that. And I was like, what do you mean? And she basically gave me the ins and outs of, okay, how does a startup work? What's an SDR? Like the bump in salary. And she sold me the dream and vision. And I was completely scared, but I was totally bought into it. And that's kind of what took me into that first tech role, where I was an SDR for, well, for those that don't know, sales development representative for a SaaS company that were launching their EMEA headquarters in London. And I was a guy that was building out the prospecting, the processes, like the handovers to account executives, all from scratch. We had 20 US SDRs based out in San Fran, but we hadn't had anybody doing it in EMEA. So I was basically their guinea pig, and I learned a lot. I failed a hell of a lot. I had different training. At one point, I went through 8 different SDR managers in the space of a year. So taking all of that on board and seeing all these new hires coming on board, the one thing that I was asking for Zuora was, as we was hiring more SDRs, I became like a team lead. And then at one point I became an SDR manager. But throughout that whole point, I never had the opportunity or time to take any formal sales management training. And I went through a hell of a lot of lessons of what is a bad micromanager to, you know, a good manager that you're able to work with. And I've been that horrible manager. And I hope to think that, you know, I'm a better manager today. But yeah, going through that experience, scared, not knowing what the hell's going to happen, and seeing so many new people come into this type of profession, feeling that exact same thing. I think what they say is that people that have been through, I wouldn't call it traumatic or hard times, tend to be able to empathize more for those that are about to go through it. So they want to care and help out those people. And I think in my last company, we had a VP of marketing that I did a project with, like helping their SDRs. And the one feedback that came out of a board meeting with him is like, Neil really gives a SHIT about these people. He cares about them. That's what makes him different. He's not just here for the money or just the title, but I actually care because people are people, you know? So that's my why. I want to help people with things that I've faced challenges with. I want to see people become successful. I want to see people being happy in what they're doing and finding a career versus, you know, punching in a 9-to-5 job where you just go home. Anybody could do that. But if you want to build yourself to become something, or, you know, be valuable input into building of a new company, I want to be that coach next to you. So that might have been a bit of a roundabout way, Anton, but that's kind of my why, my journey.
Yeah, no, listen, that's great. I share your passion for not just learning, but also helping coach and mentor others. So now, why specifically though SDR work? And the reason I say that is because two things, and maybe this is just me needing an education. One, I know being an SDR is tough. It's hard work. Here's my perception of an SDR job. You are making a lot of calls and emails, and most of them go unresponded or ignored. And sometimes you get a response, but it's not a very pleasant response sometimes. So it's tough. And you know, so why sign up for that long term? Because I know for some young professionals coming out of school, SDR work is their first sort of foray into, you know, the business world, but it's a stepping stone towards either sales, like you said, or maybe something else. But in your case, you've decided to stick with it despite sort of the pain associated to the role. So can you talk to me about that? What is it that keeps you sort of engaged and in there despite the difficulties, you know, and obviously the emotional sort of toll it can take on you, all those rejections?
100%. So I agree with you. Being a sales development rep, BDR, ADR, whatever you want to call it, the acronym, but being that first, you know, wave of prospecting to get people interested is a freaking hard job. And it can definitely take its toll. And it's helped me create a thicker skin in terms of like working within business and even taking the rejection elements into personal life and dealing with it. But why do I like it? Is because it's challenging, you know? And I think when I first joined my first tech startup, the way the AEs kind of positioned it to me was like, Neil, you're going to be the first conversation. You are the first face. You are the first, you know, dialogue between us and a new company. And that planting of that seed could turn into a deal being closed or a partnership, but you can take, you know, not so much the trophy, but like the happiness knowing that you had a playing part in a business interacting with another business. And I think one of my kind of claims to fame that I've spoken about on podcasts and stuff like that is kind of like my background with the Game of Thrones TV channel. So whilst we was working with Zora, an inbound lead came in and it was from HBO Nordic. And they advised that they'd been working with a European payment gateway. It completely failed. And they were looking for a new platform to help launch a TV show on demand. And I remember being that SDR, like speaking to a technical person, speaking to a marketing professional, speaking to like a pricing analyst, and thinking, I don't normally have these type of conversations with you, so this is cool. And they were asking me questions, and because I'd been in the role for a fair amount of time, I was able to answer them. So technical questions, commercial questions, etc. I was like, you know, doing elements of like an E and an SE together. And then introducing them to the AEs. And then obviously you as an SDI have to sell it to the AE as to why they have to take this meeting and why it's important, why it's qualified. And they're going to challenge the hell out of you. But I love that aspect of giving, an op to my AE. And if they said no, they would teach me as to why it wasn't a fit. But if they told me this was a great fit, they would like give me a pat on the back. They would give me some motivation to go find some more, but they would also involve me in what happened after I handed it over to them. But anyway, in this case, we handed it over to HBO. I remember speaking to my AE, Brendan, they're like, dude, they're flying us out to the Nordics. We're going to meet the whole HBO company. They're going to talk to us. And they came back and they had a great trip. And from my point of view, I was just happy that they accepted me because I got paid. And then when he came home, he said, okay, we've closed the deal. I said, okay, I get paid again. So that's what motivated me back then.
Yeah.
But he then said to me, yeah, they're launching some TV shows called Game of Thrones. And I was like, okay, didn't really mean anything to me, right? But fast forward a year, I'm sitting in my friend's apartment, my mate Charlie, and she says, Neil, you need to watch this TV show. It's really crazy. It's like set in medieval times. I've got small people running around, dragons and all this sort of stuff. And she plays it on and it comes up and it says Game of Thrones. And I was just like, I sat there and I was like, Charlie, I had a chat with this company and they told me about how they were going to release it and they've launched it through our company. And it was that hit me then. I was just like, I made an impact, versus a corporate company where, it's established, they already have the products and you're probably speaking to people every day. I don't really see that as big impacts, but a small, tiny startup that no one's ever heard has helped something become world renowned, and having a helping part in that. And with an SDR, you're doing calling, you're doing emailing, but for me, there is so much more to it. And this is like what I train with SDR. So there's like research, understanding what's the company's growth like, what are their aspirations, what's their corporate objective, what are they trying to achieve as a business, and then looking at our own company and thinking, can we help figure out or fill in any of those gaps and help them out? And then, targeting an account with different personas. So I might be going after a CMO or a VP of customer success, or perhaps a head of marketing. They all have their different needs and wants and things that turn them on and things that turn them off. So in essence, it's kind of like psychology. You're learning how to read people or how to have conversations with different personas and, tailor your pitch as to how you'd go into them. And every time I would get a no from a prospect or a company, that got me excited. And I was like, ooh, they told me no. I want to go find somebody that's going to tell me yes. Or, think of a strategic way to maybe even go above their head, get a discussion, and then come back and say, hey, I've been speaking to the head honcho. Do you kind of want to join in now? And they say, yeah, okay, cool, fine. So like overcoming those challenges and like getting rejected on cold calls, on emails, being asked to be unsubscribed, that's what motivated me to keep going, because I was always hunting for that yes or that acceptance. However, like in my sales career, the only reason I wanted to take an SDR job was because I wanted to become that closer. I wanted to become that account executive. And I had a taste of that role in the company that we both worked in. But truth be told, after a year of doing it, I was an average salesperson. I closed a few deals. I wasn't anything to, be super happy about. It was cool, but I kind of to the realization that I really hated it. I just found it really boring. And that was a bit of a shock for me, because I thought this is everything I wanted to be. And I finally got there and I was like, actually, this isn't what I thought it was. And when I found myself just, doing demos, answering questions, sending out a DocuSign, I just found it too transactional versus being an SDR, which was really entrenched into a company trying to, win their business, but also win their minds and hearts with the solutions that we were selling, and creating these relationships and working with an AE, going into a demo. All that excitement kind of went. And at the company that we were both working at, I had a great chat with a mentor, who then led me on to Stein Van Loo, who obviously we both know really well. And Stein kind of gave me the check-in because he'd been in this SDR life. He knew it was freaking hard. He talked about the whole AE relationship thing and that he'd done that. And he said, have you ever thought about customer success? And I was like, I don't know, dude. Like, that's in my mind back then, that's for farmers. I'm a hunter, because I had this whole mentality of I needed to be a hunter. And I remember you and me, we had a conversation before I made that transition, and we had the whole discussion about hunters and farmers and relationship building and the upsell and the value of, providing, making customers successful. And when you said that to me, it wasn't so much about we're going to close a deal, we're going to make revenue. It's about helping that customer to become successful and in love with
Yeah.
our product and make them a lifelong, I remember the way you put it to me, as a lifelong partner. We don't look at these as customers, we look at these as partners. And that sung a completely different light to me. And I was like, ooh, okay. But I remember also going into that role, like Stein kind of said to me, is like, dude, most of our CSMs, they're great, and they always want to make the customers happy, but we also need to be a bit more aggressive and have a bit more of that salesman mentality. And this is where I think you would be a good plug-in to the team. And I remember like working with Owen, Letitia, like all the guys and girls. I would always give them my 2 cents as how would I look at this as a salesperson. And I did have that whole thing of, oh, he's one of the sales guys, wasn't successful, he's coming to CS now. Yeah, I was that to an extent.
Yeah.
But we were able to like, put minds together and thinking of strategies of like doing QBRs, kickoffs, we're having a difficult customer, somebody's not responding. I was able to take elements of what I'd learned as an SDR into that position as well.
Right.
And I was actually so much more successful as an AE, as a CSM, under working underneath you, that I generated more ARR and more upsell revenue, but I also had like a great retention of my book of business. And I was proud to have these customers. I was proud to do kickoff calls. And I remember at one point, I was working with Amnesty and we went out to see a big B2B company, and we did like a sales training for our customers in front of 300 sales reps in this huge auditorium in the north of the UK. I remember coming back home, I was like, dude, I didn't do that when I was working as an AE. Like this is some good stuff. I'm really enjoying this. And I just remember speaking to like all of these other salespeople that had been in this corporate life, and they were just like, oh wow, the company working for a tech startup, that's so cool. And you guys do so much things different. And they started asking me questions around prospecting and how would I approach this and how would I do that. And that became a pattern throughout all of my CSM projects. So with all customers, we'd introduce them to the tool, they'd love it, but they'd always be pinging me messages on LinkedIn or in my email to say, hey, I've got this thing going on with a prospect, like what would you do with it, Neil?
Yeah.
And Anton, I always used to say to them, like, look, I don't get paid to help you out with sales tips. I'm supposed to just like help you stay with the tool. But I was like, look, I love helping people and I get to learn things because they're coming to me with questions that I think to myself, how would I handle this, if I go into that situation?
Yeah.
But it happens so many times that I did say to myself, I could get paid for this, And again, happy to go into that in a moment, but that's kind of like how I, launched my own company and kind of went into that path. But why am I passionate about the SDR side is I've done all the roles. The SDR piece is the excitement, breaking into a new company, creating those new relationships and being that first cog in the wheel for something that could become bigger and grow. That when I talk to SDRs joining companies, I just say to them, like, look, this SDR role, a lot of people come into it like myself because they wanted to get into sales, but it's the entry to a whole entire company, not just a sales department.
Yeah.
I've met and I've taught and I've mentored many great SDRs that have gone on to become VPs of marketing or gone in to become VPs of sales or CEOs of their own companies. And as an SDR, I say this in all interviews, I'm like, an SDR, you're kind of doing 4 roles, right? The first one is you are a marketeer. You are sharing the content and the message created by marketing, and you're trying to influence and reach new people that haven't heard of this before. You're a commercial person because you're trying to do stakeholder management. You're handling objections. You're trying to convince people to join discussions with you. You're multi-threading accounts, and you're providing pricing, asking questions, etc. You're also a tech expert because they ask you about APIs and integrations and how does a platform work with such and such, does it have this feature? And then to the last point, you are working customer success because you may be speaking to people today that aren't ready to buy, but could be in 4 to 6 months or a year from now, and you have to nurture that relationship. So what I say to SDRs is give me 12 months of being consistent in this role, give me your all. And at the end of those 12 months, I will ask the question, out of those 4 personas that you've been working, which one interests you the most? And then let's define a career path to move you into that. So, I just love SDRs, man.
That's great. So perfect segue, like you said. Let me go ahead and just share my screen now. Let's talk about, you've been on quite this journey, starting as an individual contributor and working for different companies, taking what you've learned from both good and bad experiences. And I guess you're the CEO of your own company, essentially, right? HappySelling. So I love this website. Talk to me about the theme here. You've got astronauts in space and just some really exciting stuff here. You've got a podcast. I want to talk about that as well a little bit. So can you just sort of have at it while I sort of bounce around your website here?
Definitely. So a lot of people ask me, like, why Happy Selling? What's the name? But what's the story behind the name? So funny enough, again, Anton, when we are working together in our same company, training sales reps or SDRs in that sales tool that we were selling, at the end of every training session, I'd always say, happy selling. Like, I want you to enjoy what you're doing and go out and have fun with sales. So happy selling. And then when I was thinking about, okay, I want to launch my own company, what the hell am I going to call it? And I said, happy selling, because I want to teach brand new reps the art of prospecting and selling and to fall in love with it and, get into sales. And then over the past few years, Happy Selling has had different logos, iterations. I just had like a basic Wix website just to get my name out there and, start building up my brand and my reputation and clientele. But throughout the years working in tech companies, you'd always see like a job post, hey, come join this great new rocket ship, or join this tech startup. We're changing the world. We're the disruptors. And you'd always see like an image of a rocket. And from my point of view, the rocket is the vehicle to get you to where you want. If you want to be a 100 million ARR company, that's great. But it's the astronauts or the pilots or the people that drive that rocket ship.
Right.
So from my perspective, I'm not focusing on the rocket. I'm focusing on the people that are the explorers that are doing the work and, traveling to new places. There's always been the old verbiage of, sky's the limit. From my point of view, sky is not the limit, because if there are stars past the sky, there's so much more to explore. So the kind of way that I look at Happy Selling in terms of training is like, you have these brand new recruits in NASA, like I'm a big space fan as well. They're coming on board, they go through the coaching, they go through like, hard trials and tribulations of, becoming a successful astronaut. And it's not for everyone, but those that go through that, they then become successful. They become part of a team. They then go into that rocket ship and they launch out into space and they go and explore. So once you've done your SDR training, or, you learn the art of prospecting, the learning doesn't stop there. It goes continuously throughout your career, through those experiences, to those new planets or customers or prospects or companies that you're joining. So that's kind of like the whole space theme. And we've got that little Sydney guy, the SDR. But for me, the possibilities are endless. It's infinite.
Yeah, this is great. I love this. And I really like this bit here, invest in your most valuable asset. And I think that's an area most organizations and frankly, most managers sort of fail in, is not doing enough to enable their people. I've seen in organizations, they hand you a laptop and they expect you to sort of figure it out on your own or give really poor advice, like you heard from someone who said, essentially do what I say, and don't ask questions, which is really not good. So I like that a lot. And so talk to me a little bit more about your method. You've broken it down here into 3 phases: new camp, launchpad, and mission control. Can you get into a bit more detail about that?
Yeah, definitely. So again, a lot of what I put into my website or my methodology is what I've learned as an SDR, be an AE and a CSM. And my methodology is similar to that of a CSM. So with New Camp, that's kind of like your kickoff call, right? So here we understand the SDRs, their ICP, their targets, their personas, their tooling, their tech stack, and how they go to market. And at this point, I initially will give SDRs like the fundamentals of being an SDR. So, how to run a discovery meeting, how to have a meaningful conversation, how to run a disco call, how to lock down and book the demo, the fundamentals of what they need. Because to your point, and I've gone through this myself, the reason that I'm in business is a lot of companies will hire an SDR, they'll give them the laptop, they'll give them product and sales training, but sales in how do we sell this product? And then they're giving a list of like 1,000 contacts in a CRM and they said, go out and, go book some meetings. That's not enough, right? SDRs need to know how to have discussions with different personas, how to prospect, how to do multi-channel prospecting through different channels, etc. So this is at that point that I give them the initial end user training to become an SDR. And then 3 months down the line, we kind of look at the results. We see how people have like progressed, and then we kind of give further training, or we give refresher training and coaching. But at this point, we can then put in a platform, like a coaching platform in place where we can put our methodologies, our frameworks, and I coach the managers to become the coaches. So how to give their reps feedback, how to diagnose a call, how to give feedback on improvements, or, sharing best practices. And then towards the end, what we do is we take it in an advanced stage. So most of these SDRs, if they've been in their job successfully and they still have a job, we then start helping SDR managers to figure out, okay, should they be putting these people into the next role as an AE? Should they be creating team lead roles?
Right.
Or, is it time to transition them out into a completely different department?
Right.
But being that coach for not only the SDRs, but the SDR manager that's come on board. And what I found in the last year, I've had a lot more clients because I've had people that have been AEs or they've been VPs of sales, but now they're a BDR manager and it's a completely different ball game for them.
Got it.
So I also do like one-to-one coaching with SDR managers as well as SDRs as well.
I love that.
But this methodology is, again, inspired from actually working in SaaS companies and trying to put it like an SDR framework on it.
Right. Now, talk to me about further along the inspiration. I heard you mention earlier in our conversation and here on your website, you mentioned Jocko and Winning by Design. Can you talk to me about a bit more about what Winning by Design is all about and what resonated for you the most, and maybe what you've taken and sort of adapted and made your own from that?
Yeah, 100%. So big shouts out to Winning by Design and Jacko and the team. The way that I came across them, again, was the same company you and me were working with. And our leadership obviously arranged Winning by Design to come in as SaaS trainers. And from session one, I remember sitting in our Ghent headquarters, and Jacko, like, he was this really animated guy. He was funny. He was joking with her, and to an extent, I kind of found him cheesy, but I liked it. And I could see like some of the reps like rolling their eyes and stuff. I said, but this dude's got energy. He's come into the room with a can of Red Bull and he's making us all laugh and everything. He hooked me in.
Yeah.
But then he started like going through like different sales methodologies that have been around, and then, more of a customer centric approach. So he said, like, in sales, we're always about trying to close the customer, try and get as much revenue out of the customer. And we're trying to bant them. We're trying to do this. We're trying to do the challenger sale. And it's kind of annoying European audiences. But we need to kind of bring it back to basis as to science, or the science of selling, right? Taking in the empathetic side of it, looking at it being more customer centric, like helping the customer understand the problems that they're having and helping them come to a conclusion and being that guide for them. So he had this whole, like, I've gone through different sales trainings, but for the first time, it felt like I was being given a SaaS training,
right?
Like how other SaaS companies operate and the way that they should be going to market with their customers. And it was like a light bulb went off in my head, because I'd been at Zora, I'd been at other tech companies, I'd done corporate selling. And for the first time, I met a trainer that didn't bore me, spoke the gospel and truth. And I remember looking at him saying, I want your job. I want to do what you do. Or I want to be like, I see him as Yoda and I'm like Luke, I want to become his Padawan, And with fate being fate, like when I moved on from our company and I started HappySelling, I had no customers, I had no website, I had no methodology, I had nothing. I only just had the experience of being that guy that trained other people, that I reached out to Jacko and team. And I said, hey guys, really big fan of your work, love what you're doing, I'd love to be more involved. And I basically prospected them, like I would write the same prospect message I would to somebody that I want to book a meeting with. I did the same thing to Dan Smith, who was like Jacko's like right-hand man. And it kicked off with a meeting. So we had that discussion and he said, look, we're based out in the US. We would love to grow a presence in EMEA. And we'd worked with you before, really liked you as one of our favorite students, would love to have you on board. And I thought, great, now I'm getting my formal qualification in sales and I'm going to university now to learn it from a master, right? And I learned a hell of a lot with them. And they took me on a couple of projects, which was really cool. And I remember doing my first sales training session, I was sweating balls and I was completely scared. And I remember Dan saying to me, he's like, why are you so nervous? I said, what happens if I make a mistake? And he says, here's the thing, Neil, you're going to be doing this multiple times and you're going to be teaching the same content to different people in different countries. This will be the first time for them. So when you make a mistake, you'll make a mistake, but they will never know that you've made a mistake. So don't worry about it. And I said, okay, cool. So I did it, really got excited with it. I worked with them for about 7 months. We then came to a position where, you know, they really wanted me to go full time with them. And with that, in essence, I would have to disband HappySelling and, you know, my own business and go with them. And that didn't sit with me. I was like, I want to create this baby. Like, this is my business. This is what I want to do. This is my dream. That I respectfully, well, we came to the agreement that, you know, that can't work. So we went separate ways, no bad feelings, etc.
Right.
But I took a lot of what I learned from them, and it goes into the training that I provide today, but also marrying in the different methodologies that I've learned in other trainings,
Right.
but the experiences that I've learned being that SDR and being that SDR manager. So a lot of the time people say to me, like, what differentiates you like from other vendors? And I have this question, I'm like, me.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
I go silent. They're like, what do you mean you? And I said, well, I've been there, I've done that. And I still do a job where I am the SDR manager. So I do the job as well as helping others do the job. And I train the people that they're going to be doing the job with.
Right.
And I always say to them, and this is something I learned from when I was under your leadership. When I was a CSM, I used to say, my job is not to do sales. I'm not the salesperson. I'm here to get you results, but I don't promise results.
Right.
And I'm kind of like a PT, like a personal trainer in a gym, where you'll come to my gym, I'll show you how to bench, I'll show you how to do the curls, I'll show you how to do this, but it's not me that's going to get you your body. It's going to be down to you to execute that consistently and know that I'll be there supporting you to get it done.
Right.
And that's exactly the same way I go into HappySelling. Every VP of sales or CRO said, I'm not here to promise you results. What I can promise is that your students will be able to walk away with things that they can use straight after these sessions, and they'll have somebody to come and ask questions with. And I'm always happy to revisit things, but 9 times out of 10 people that follow that gym routine and do it consistently do get results. And I'd be happy to put you in touch with them. But me on my website, I will never say that I will promise you 100% results, because it's not for everyone, you know?
Well, correct. And I think to your point, there's only so much you can do. The people you're working with have to meet you halfway. they have to do sort of their part. Or as they say in America, you know, you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. So
yeah,
it's like, yeah, results may vary, and it's going to have a lot to do with what your efforts are and how much you're able to apply what the learnings were. Now, real quick, before we move off onto the Freemason subject, I was just curious, talk to me about your podcast, and frankly, I'll give you credit for helping inspire, you know, what I'm doing now with these conversations. I noticed that you were doing this. You've been doing it for some time, it looks like. You've got a bunch on here. Maybe just talk us through what started this and what it's all about.
Yeah, happy to. So again, thank you for giving props to this. And again, I'm so happy that you're following this route as well, but going video, which is a step ahead of mine. The easiest way to put this was, this came through a bit of hardship last year in life.
Mm-hmm.
So with HappySelling, I had a client, and because the pandemic hit, my job was to train and enable new hires. But because a pandemic came in, there were no new hires. So they didn't need Neil. And unfortunately, I lost the only job that I had at that point. And for about 6 months, it was hard. But again, my passion, I just want to help people. So what I was doing a lot, Anton, was connecting with SDRs or A's or people that were going through hard times on LinkedIn, like being that door if they needed somebody to chat to, but also to give career advice. I was really like proactive, trying to get people into jobs that had, you know, lost jobs and were trying to find a new career, etc. And at the end of all these conversations, I'd always say to, like, even to my former students, like, check out these podcasts, listen to like John Barrows, listen to the Salesman Red, listen to Sales Hacker, like the Daily Sales, listen to all these things. They're going to be great things for you. But the feedback that I kept getting from either my, you know, my students or the people I was giving, like, Neil, these are great and there is a lot of information, but some of these people that do these podcasts aren't doing the role that I'm looking to do today. They maybe did it 10 years ago. So I don't know how relevant the advice is going to be. And I said, well, a lot of advice is, you know, evergreen, but I totally get what you mean. And because of HappySelling, my focus is just SDRs and sales development. I was like, wouldn't it be cool, Anton, if we could have a podcast designed for the brand new SDR, to have SDRs that are still in the role or, you know, been in it 2 years max, where they can give the advice of, what did it feel like to join a tech company? Like, how did you fall into sales? What was your onboarding like? What did you go through when you wasn't hitting quota in the first couple of weeks or months? How did you handle like taking on a new job and working in the world of tech and explaining it to your friends and family? All these scary thoughts that I've gone through, and a lot of people that I've met have gone through. And I said, imagine if we could put that into a podcast. So the three core pillars of like my podcast is, firstly, a lot of these SDRs that are on my show, people don't know who they are today, but I want people to know who they are. So I want to help create their first element of brand identity and give them a face and a name. Second point is that I want to be able to share insights for brand new SDRs of what to expect when coming to the world of tech sales. And thirdly, to share as much knowledge within the SDR community on a global level. And this was just an idea, right? This was just something on my vision board. I said, this is what I want to do, because I had no work and I didn't know what the hell to do. So I reached out to one of my former students and I said, Alana, I want to do a podcast. I want to try and help more SDRs out. Do you mind being my first guest? And she said, yeah, cool, I'm down. Recorded that one. And then I said, okay, do you know anybody else? Oh, maybe you should speak to this person. And then I just started reaching out to people with this. I only had 3 slides on a deck because I didn't have the actual podcast. And I'm happy to say 2 months later, we recorded 50 shows and it went live as of last November. I had no idea. I wasn't expecting anything from it. I was just like, I want to do a podcast. I want to make my mark. I want to try and help out some SDRs and see where it goes. And we racked up in about 5 or 6 months, around 6,000 downloads. A hell of a lot of people connect. Like now I don't go prospect for guests. People come to me asking if they can be on the show, which I love. But I've made so many new friends and I've met so many cool people from around the globe that it really, reignites my passion for this SDR thing. I'm not the only geek or SDR fan out there. There are a hell of a lot of people and so many talented people. A majority of the people that I've spoken to, either they've been promoted, they've gone into new roles, but they then share my podcast with their new hires. Something I found recently, I'm a hiring manager for my current client. I've got people listening to the episodes of my podcast before having an interview with me and quoting things and asking my opinion and etc. I'm like, you've done your research. I love it.
Nice. I love that. And I think you also told me that you're kind of transitioning from podcasts to doing videos to get sort of the visual effect added to the conversation. Is that right?
Indeed, sir. So I'm always looking for feedback, and I always ask on LinkedIn, like, how do people consume podcasts, etc. And I've learned there are 3 types of learners. There is a visual learner, so they love to watch videos like YouTube. I'm a visual learner. There are technical learners that love to read like show notes, links, blogs, books, etc. And then you have the audio listeners that listen to podcasts, etc. And I thought, how can I cater for all 3 crowds? So came across a cool platform where I'm able to record video and also have the podcast and have the transcription. So in a few weeks, it's going live, but there'll be the SDR Disco called podcast, which will go out as normal, but there'll also be the vidcast version, which will be available on YouTube.
That's great. Looking forward to seeing that. And I'll put links in the video description to your website, obviously, and to the podcast. Now, the next subject I wanted to talk about is something that I've always found fascinating. I was really excited when I found out that you are a Freemason. So I don't know a lot about what Freemason, who the Freemasons are or what you stand for. So I was wondering if you could just maybe educate me a bit more about what it means to be a Freemason, the sort of the history and just any information you can share to help create some awareness into maybe something that others aren't aware of either.
100% happy to do so. So similar to yourself, a couple of years back, I had no idea what the hell a Freemason was or what it meant, but because of media and propaganda, I had this mindset of they're the Illuminati, they're the elite, they're the ones that run the banks, and they make cool stuff happen around the world. And I've always been an anarchist at heart, and I love to disrupt stuff like that. And funny enough, when I was in my first tech job, the place in Covent Garden, Long Acre Lane, the Freemasons headquarters or Freemasons Hall is based in London. And I remember every lunch break, I used to go outside, get my sandwich, and I'd sit outside this Freemasons Hall on a sunny day. And I always used to look at the building thinking, what the hell do they do in there? Are they like devil worshippers? Like what secret, like sordid things happen in there? Which then led me on to this website and just, wondering what the hell it is. And back then, I think it was like 2013 or 14 before my son was born. I contacted them because I wanted to have a meeting to see if I could get initiated and if I could get into the crew, right? And my idea was I need to get in there, learn all their secrets, and then expose them. For some reason, unbeknownst, the application didn't go through. I didn't hear from them, and then life got busy, careers, etc., etc. So I just kind of left it. And then a few years later, after becoming a father, I realized, okay, I've got a great job, I had a partner, I had a home, I had a son, I had everything I needed. I think I wanted more from life, and I felt that I wanted to give more back, So I revisited the website, and kind of like the easiest way to explain what a Freemason is it's kind of like an old gentleman's club. You get a bunch of guys that meet up once a month to like have a bite and a drink, and they do like ceremonies, and they try to instill like brotherly love. They do things for the community, and they do a lot of like philanthropic work as well. And I reached out to them and I just said, hey, I'd really like to, find out what it means to become a Freemason. And the 3 requisites are that you have to be over the age of 21, you can't have a criminal record, and you believe in a higher being. That higher being could be Jesus, Muhammad, Allah, pizza, the god of pizza, whatever it is, but you have to believe in some sort of higher divine entity, right? If it's Buddha or whatever you believe in. And they said, okay, cool, we're going to set you up a meeting with a local lodge. So a lodge is a group of people in a certain building where they go to visit and they do their rituals, etc. And I met with a really cool group in South London, and they said, look, this is what we're all about. We've got like 40 to 50 members, or brethren, or brothers, as they call them. And we meet like every Monday, we meet on a Wednesday, and we meet once a month, and we go out for a drink. We have wives joining, etc. And I was like, woo, woo, woo. I have a life. I have a kid. I've got stuff. I can't be giving that much time to this. And I'm like, oh, okay. So they then introduced me to a smaller lodge, which only met once a month, and they did a couple of events each year. And through that, they qualify you, like it's a job interview, right? They're qualifying candidates to see, are you a good fit? So they want to understand what's your motivations to join, like how did you find out about this? What are you looking to get out of Freemasonry? And what is your understanding of Freemasonry? And my understanding was it's an organization which has been around for 300 plus years and started in England. And traditionally, it would be like scientists or stonemasons or people that had acquired like knowledge and were skilled workers in a certain field. And they would come together to share best practices. But equally, they're there to instill brotherly love, help out other people, do good for the community, and help themselves to become a better citizen as a man, as an individual, right? To have like a moral compass. And why did I want to join is I just wanted to meet new people. I wanted to meet people that I wouldn't have the opportunity to meet through my current working life. So a lot of Freemasons could be police, they could be lawyers, they could be builders, they could be somebody like me working in tech sales. There are so many different backgrounds. And the cool thing is when they meet, the 2 things you do not discuss is politics or religion. Those are the 2 things that you do not discuss. And those are the 2 things that tend to, cause barriers between people. So coming into a place where I could go ask Antoine, like, I've got this going on in my life, like, how would you handle it? You'd be able to give me advice. Or perhaps, hey, you know what? I'm thinking of buying my first car or property, but I'm not sure who to speak to. They could introduce me to a brother that works in that field, and I can trust him without him screwing me over, because we've made this oath that, we're honest, we're brothers, and we help each other out. And a lot of people want to get into this because they want that, they think, hey, if I get in with the Freemasons and I can break as many laws as I want, and I'll be with the in crowd, and it's not about that, right? And some other people want to get into it because they want to manipulate systems or people, and there's a dark side to everything, right? But it's the same with religions. You may have one type of fraction of a religion, which is, well, the majority, where everybody's really happy, but then you've got that really small sect where they're not really nice people and they do bad things. It happens within Freemasonry. Right. But what it allowed me to do was meet with a bunch of, and I put it in the nicest way, a bunch of old farts that have been through life. They moan a hell of a lot. They complain, but we meet once a month. We catch up. We do charity work. They give advice to young men becoming fathers or growing up in their life. And the idea is to be, how do you become a better man? How do you become a better citizen? How do you become a better father? How do you become a better brother? And guide yourself in such a way that you lead your life to get the best out of it, but also to give back.
Yeah, no, I love that. And so obviously an organization that's hundreds of years old, that started as a gentleman's club, but has evolved over time. And looks like there's actually women Freemasons as well. So
Yeah.
very inclusive and diverse, which is wonderful. There's some details here on the website, which again, I'll put a link to for anybody who wants to learn more. And the mission statement section, really resonates for me. I love the vision and the mission, and obviously the values are certainly values I think most people can relate to and would aspire to achieve. So this is wonderful and really exciting. I appreciate you sharing some insights regarding it. Before we run out of time, the last thing I want to ask you about is on a personal level. Remind me, I seem to remember you saying something about being in the music business or a MC. So music is something I think you're passionate about, correct? Can you just remind me what the details are there and what you're doing on the side for fun?
Yes, sir. So simply put, a rapper, an MC slash rapper. And this passion is something which was around in my early teens. So it's a type of EDM, electro type of music called UK garage, very similar to like house. And it was a prominent sound within the UK and London growing up. And funnily enough, this music is what took me away from gang life when I was younger, because if we was on the streets doing bad things, or again, I wasn't a killer or murderer or anything like that, but we did stuff that we shouldn't have done when we were younger, right?
Sure.
But there was a lot of youth clubs or youth committees where it introduced young children to get off the streets, come check out music equipment like turntables, decks, records, and a mic and all that sort of stuff. And as young teens, we like had our idols and heroes who we listened to within that music scene, and we'd always try to emulate them. And I remember I had no experience with the decks. Like I couldn't match beats to save my life. I wasn't that way inclined, but I had a way with words. And I remember we used to imitate our favorite MCs, like at parties, under 18 birthday parties, etc. And my friends were like, Neil, you have got this voice. Like you've got this MC voice. Like, how do you do it? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm just copying what I hear on the radio. But it used to get people excited and happy. And it was always kind of like that party trick. And then completely left music at age 15 because I tried to get into championships and work, but my family was always like, education, you need to do this, scrap the music, don't do that. Which I found really hard because my mother was an international singer. I said, but Mum, you go to the studio, you do shows, you do concerts. I want to do that. Yes, I do that because I'm providing for you. I don't want you to live the same life. And I was like, okay, that doesn't make sense. But fast forward a few years later, I think it was in the early 2000s, went through a really traumatic life experience. And an old friend, DJ, once said to me, like, Neil, I know you're going through a hard time at the minute. Why don't you just come to the studio? And I'm doing like a live internet radio show. And I was like, okay, cool, I'll come along. And he was mixing, he was playing some music, some house music and some funky stuff. And like he was getting his listeners reacting. And you see the views just going up and up and up. And he said, Neil, didn't you used to MC? And I was like, yeah, dude, that was years ago. I don't do that anymore. He was like, come on. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. A few drinks later, he said, Neil, do you want to go on the mic? And I was like, yeah, hell yeah, let's do this. And I fell in love with it again. And it was just, getting a hype sort of stuff going on. Yeah. And then, yeah, it was just always my secret party trick. But I then one day had the opportunity, I bumped into like a really well-known DJ in my local town. I went up to him and I just said to him, hey, dude, I'm an MC. Do you mind if I go on the microphone? And he's looking in the nightclub and he's like, dude, the management, they don't like that. The MC's like, we can't do this. And I looked around at him and I was like, dude, there's only like 5 people in a room that should have 300 people. Come on, let me have a go. He's like, okay, look, I'll give you 10 minutes and then you've got to go. And for 2 hours, we went back to back. And then he just said to me, he's like, dude, I like what you do. Come back next week, you've got a job. So this is when I started my tech job. And I was doing this on the evening. So like Monday to Friday, I was Neil Bhuiyan, business professional. On the weekend, I was MC SNYE-B, UK Garage MC. But he was actually connected to a lot of the big pioneers within the music industry that I loved. And he introduced me to them and I went out on tours with them. I traveled internationally and I learned a lot of good skills. And it also, being an SDR, helped me understand how to position myself as a service, going into nightclubs, charging a fee, like what this is at the turnout, this is what we're going to do. and we used to pack out venues. And I think I wouldn't say I made it, but the defining point for me was I was at the O2 Arena in 2015 in front of a crowd of 3,500 people on a microphone, and getting the crowd to cheer and scream back was just, it was a feeling that I've never, had before, and I absolutely loved it. Yeah. So throughout my careers, when I've gone into tech companies, and every time there's like a company offsite or party going on, and if there's a DJ playing, I always tend to grab the microphone and end up doing it. But now, being a father, I don't party as much as I used to, so I do more hip hop and spoken poetry. But I've got some bars to come.
So can we find any of your stuff on YouTube or on the internet?
Oh, that's a good question. Is it safe for work? Yeah, safe for work. Yeah. So if you just search MC SNYE-B, I'll send you the link, and if you want to put it under it, you can check out me on SoundCloud.
Please do. And last question, just real quick, because I'm a big music lover as well, and I grew up with hip hop in the 80s and 90s. Who are some of your influences? Who are some of the MCs or that really
that's a tough one.
Help, inspire you?
So people that I love, so Method Man from Wu-Tang Clan, because of his delivery and the content and his style. Notorious B.I.G., Tupac. I loved A Tribe Called Quest. I loved LL Cool J just for the way that he delivered, and he was a smooth dude and his stage presence. A lot of UK rappers, so people like Skepta, Wiley, like all the grime artists in the UK. But my music, I've got an eclectic taste. So a lot of people, when they meet me, they think I'm into hip hop, like, garage, EDM, but I'm a sucker for jazz. I'm a sucker for classical music. I could sit there listening one day to Thelonious Monk, and then, perhaps go and listening to something from Elvis later down the line, or listening to George Gershwin, Rhapsody in Blue. I love all types of music. And I think when I was younger, I used to have trouble sleeping, and I'd always try to listen to stories or recorded stuff. But I found that if I was listening to a conversation, I would stay so attent to those words that I couldn't switch off. Right. So I came across smooth and classical jazz. And because it was just, very abstract and there were no words, that's where I fell into the love of the melody of tunes and music. So I've got a mixed bag.
I love that. Well, listen, Neil, this has really been wonderful. I appreciate you carving out time out of your busy day. I know it's later in the day for you because you're in the UK. So I'm going to put links in the description below to HappySelling, the Freemasons. And then, if you can send me any links regarding some of the MC work you've done in the past, I'd love to watch it myself. And let's keep in touch, my friend. Always a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Anton. It's been a privilege being on the show, sir. It all links. And if anybody's got questions, reach out. But Anton, this has been an absolute pleasure to be with you here today, sir.
Friend. Cheers.
Thank you.